Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here. For all of those who are in the audience, just a note before we begin. We are recording this for my show on CNN. So if you cannot make any loud demonstrations of approval or protest, either way, we'll be equal opportunity discriminators in this regard. We have a rare and important opportunity here to have a conversation with the President of Israel, Isaac Herzog, who has become a kind of legendary figure in Israel, and I think it's fair to say has managed to take the office of presidency and give it a certain moral weight that that perhaps it has not always had. So it's a huge pleasure. President Herzog, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure being here, again, being at the World Economic Forum. And thank you, Fareed, for your words.
We are, what is it now, 1 year, 3 months from the start of the October 7th war, the attack which then triggered the war. And it seems to me that Israel's situation today has utterly transformed. Hamas is in very bad shape. Its leadership has been largely destroyed. The leaders who planned the attack have been destroyed. Hezbollah has been substantially weakened. Multiple levels of its leadership have been destroyed. Iran its air defenses have been essentially neutralized. Its capacity to make weaponry has been significantly impeded. When you look at all that, do you view it as an opportunity for Israel, and what kind of opportunity?
First of all, we are still at war. Of course, the ceasefire began on Sunday, and that is a very blessed moment, especially as we are hoping and yearning and working towards bringing back our hostages. I'll talk about it in a minute, but I would say that clearly the situation poses a great opportunity for the world at large, especially the free world, because the source of evil that emanates and covers us all starts with terror, especially with Iranian-instigated terror. This is the strategic issue above everything. Each proxy you deal with, the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas, Iraq, etc., so forth and so on, it is all supported, financed, organized, commanded, controlled, trained by Iran. This empire of evil in Tehran is still spending billions, and I have news for you and the entire universe. They are working day in, day out, even now, rather than soul-searching, looking in the mirror, seeing how they failed and how much damage and havoc and sorrow they created with their barbaric attacks with their proxies. They are continuing endlessly rushing towards the bomb. And of course, planning all the time terror attacks world over and in our region, including predominantly the regime and its organizations, the IRGC, as the main focus. And I'm warning the world not to fall into kind of an aura of optimism, but rather be lucid about it. Yes, there is an opportunity, a huge opportunity, to change the course of the Middle East for the better, but there is also huge risk so long as this regime in Iran stays put and continues its efforts. It can stop its efforts, but it still continues its efforts.
But let me ask you then, what would you advocate happen with Iran? Because right now, the United States has already a fairly strong, I mean, there are sanctions against Iran. The United States supported Israel when it went after Iran's air defenses. Do you believe that this is the moment to strike Iran? Do you believe it's the moment to confront Iran with a new nuclear deal, which is, you know, no nuclear program, but also no support for proxies?
So I would be, of course, cautious in what I say because of the sensitivity. You know, President Trump was sworn in yesterday. I congratulate him wholeheartedly. I think this will be a main issue on his agenda in the very near future. and it will have to be deliberated between Israel and all the rest of the region with the US administration. Clearly, one thing has to be absolutely clear: Iran cannot have nuclear capabilities, and two, Iran has to stop with its proxies and this kind of axis of evil which has caused such tremendous pain. We are seeing historical change. We're seeing change in Lebanon, we're seeing historical change in Syria, we are seeing historical change, hopefully, in the Gaza Strip. This will require an enormous effort, but I must point out, and here zoom in on the key to it all is a hostage deal, meaning once now we've had the opportunity to reach a hostage deal, which was very difficult to reach this agreement. It is very painful, very difficult. I met today with the Prime Minister of Qatar, Sheikh Mohammed Al-Thani. I want to thank him for his incredible efforts, as well as all the other mediators, Egypt, and of course the United States, the outgoing administration, and the incoming administration. They were extremely, extremely helpful. This is the key to opening the door. We still have so many hostages in Gaza, in the dungeons of Gaza, going through barbaric torture. One of them is the grandfather of Daniel Lifshitz. Right here, Daniel, stand up. Daniel is a 36-year-old Israeli, a wonderful guy. The family comes from kibbutz Nir Oz. It's a kibbutz which was devastated, burnt, and abducted and raided by terrorists, and many hostages were taken hostage, including his grandfather and his grandmother. His grandmother, Yocheved, a heroine in and of herself, was freed, and she is unbelievably strong and impressive. His grandfather, Oded, who's 84 years old, has been there in captivity. He's in the list for the first round. Oded is a huge peace activist. Oded would volunteer for Palestinians in Gaza every day to take them to Israeli hospitals, and yet he was taken in the most brutal way to Gaza. And we pray that him and all the other hostages will come back immediately, according to the agreement, as soon as possible, with no ifs and buts. And I think we all have to express our gratitude to the Jordan.
So let me ask you about the prospects of getting more hostages out, which is getting to the second phase of the deal.
Yes.
At the second phase of the deal, Israeli forces do have to withdraw, according to the outlines, from some substantial areas. If that happens, it has already been made clear that the Minister of Finance, Mr. Smotrich, will resign, in which case the Bibi Netanyahu does not have a majority. Is it inevitable that we will never get to the second phase because of that complexity?
No, I believe that there is a clear potential of getting to the second phase. There is a desire to get to the second phase. We meant it when we signed the agreement. We know that there are challenges and arguments. Israel is a democracy, and you want to know something. I truly understand those who have reservations and fears, because we are going to release terrible terrorists. This is the whole equation. We are asking to release women and children, and for that we are paying with terrorists, cruel, barbaric terrorists. But we all agree that this has to be done. We want them home. It's top priority of the nation of Israel. We will have to deal with the real question of the day after in Gaza. How do we make sure that this does not recur? How do we make sure that it's not Hamas who dictates and leads that place? We have to learn from historic lessons and from all our experiences, and as such, focus on that. And I think the crux of the discussions will have to deal with that regarding the second phase.
So people like General Petraeus, who is a friend of Israel, say that Israel's military strategy has been misguided, that it has been entirely focused on simply destroying Hamas without building up confidence and in the rest of the Palestinian population, and without separating, if you will, the terrorists from the local population. as a result, he predicted very early on my program that Israel would have to keep going back into each of these towns, Khan Yunis, wherever it was, back, again and again. That does seem to be what's happened. So how do you get out of that cycle without trying to in some way give the Palestinians in Gaza some confidence that they have a leadership that they feel is legitimate?
As leaders in the region who clearly identify a unique historic opportunity. The trajectory is clear. The trajectory is the acceptance of Israel in the region, no terror, safety for all, and development of the Middle East towards a better future. But there's one thing in Petraeus' comments that in my mind suffer from a certain naivete in the way you focus on it. The truth of the matter is that our soldiers were shocked in the infrastructure that they found in Gaza, meaning in so many houses, there were tunnels leading to the command and control centers of Hamas, to places where hostages are held, to huge amount of ammunition. It's a whole school of military operational tactics that were basically strategy. They filled up Gaza on behalf of Iran and Hamas as a terror base to be launched against Israel. It's clearly a wake-up call also for Israel. Same goes, by the way, for southern Lebanon. You know that we unraveled about 85,000 weapons of all sorts, from missiles to rifles, throughout the little strip that we took over and cleaned up in southern Lebanon. So meaning that we have an issue here, how to make sure that this does not recur. We are still under the trauma and the post-trauma of October 7th. Let's not elude ourselves. We have to learn the lessons and make sure that there is clear security. When I spoke in Congress 3 months before the war, in a joint session, I said that it is only terror which is blocking peace. And now I think, and especially in light of President Trump's speech yesterday about terror organizations, I truly believe that there has to be a major world effort against terror. And this is one of them. Terror is creating havoc in Africa, in all sorts of regions around the world. We must fight terror.
So you talked about transforming the region, and part of that clearly would be if Israel and Saudi Arabia could have relations, because that would almost certainly then trigger a broader Arab reconciliation with Israel. The Saudi government has made clear that in order for that to happen, they need to see, in the foreign minister's words, permanent and irreversible steps toward a Palestinian state. The Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia has talked about a return to 67 borders. Is Israel willing to make those kind of concessions to get to that transformed state of relations?
So I would say, first of all, that the grand vision, and it's something that makes so much sense, is that the children of Abraham, Muslims and Jews and Muslims, dwell together in peace in the region of their creation. It is something huge. You read it in the Bible, you read it in the Quran. It is something that after the enormous pain, really pain and enormous tragedies, we should strive for. And I think that a cornerstone for the next step of getting to that dream realized is a normalization, as they call it. But let's be honest, is real dialogue between Israel and Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia and Israel. Saudi Arabia is a very important country in the region and is, of course, the basin for Islam. And I believe that this must be moved forward. I say it openly. I supported it, and I still support it wholeheartedly.
But do you support the conditions
and I think that there is an opportunity now to move forward. Regarding the nitty-gritty or the conditions, I would ignore some of all the statements. I think these things need to be discussed in closed rooms. I assume the Oval Office will be involved in it as well. I think that everybody realizes that this is a step that should radiate to the entire universe. Israel is here in this region forever, and that's why we should aim for it. apart also from the fact that Saudi Arabia itself is a key to regional stability. For example, I can envision that our region will supply energy, solar energy, to Europe, Asia, and Africa. We need for that a combination of all the states. There is an infrastructure available. There was a vision which was laid out by the previous outgoing administration of President Biden, connecting Israel all the way to India, meaning Europe to Southeast Asia and America to Australia through the Eastern Hemisphere. These are big things, and we have to push for all of that.
In that vision, what is your vision for the 7 million Palestinians who live in Israel, in Gaza, and the West Bank? They neither have full political rights in Israel, they are not Israeli citizens, nor do they have full political rights in their own country. What is to happen to them?
So we should strive for peace, and they deserve to have peace just like us. But it requires them to disseminate and understand that terror is out of the question under any circumstances. And unfortunately, even now, in these very hours, we are fighting and combating terror in the Jenin area, which is under the Palestinian Authority's rule. I believe that there will be a moment after the enormous pain and after the rules are set, which mean no more terror, that there will be a moment where we'll have to have a real peace with our Palestinian neighbors. And I dream of that day, but it will take time.
Does that include a Palestinian state?
It includes many ideas, because the idea of the two-state solution is something which, on record, I supported in the past many times. But I would say that I had a wake-up call following October 7th, in the sense that I want to hear my neighbors say how much they object, regret, condemn, and do not accept in any way the terrible tragedy of the terror attack of October 7th and the fact that terror cannot be the tool to get there. I mean, innocent civilians were butchered, raped, abducted, burned to death. People who are the biggest peace activists, we had to go to DNA labs all over the world to identify their bodies. Hostages are still in the dungeons of Gaza. This doesn't work this way. If we are dignified human beings, it is unacceptable under any norm.
Let me ask you about something that happened in Israel. The head of the IDF, very respected Lieutenant General, resigned because he felt it was important to take personal responsibility for the failure of October 7th. Should that be the extent of it, or is there also political responsibility, for example, in creating a division between the Palestinian Authority and Gaza, in funding Hamas indirectly through the Qataris as a way of keeping the Palestinian leadership divided? Were those also failures of Israeli strategy for which somebody should be held accountable?
So first, let's explain to the public here that in the last hour, the Chief of Staff, General Halevi, submitted a letter announcing that he will be retiring in March. And I made a statement commending him. He's an outstanding hero of Israel who took responsibility both originally and in his letter for the failure of the IDF to block and prevent the horrific attack of October 7th. This, of course, does not derogate from the real responsibility which lies on Hamas, of course. And I also made a statement that there is a national need to inquire in depth. My wife and I, we've paid bereavement calls and visits and meetings with over 1,000 bereaving Israeli families of all faiths, religions, styles of life, and political views. Incredible nation we have, and I'm very, very proud. But there's enormous pain and agony, and many of these families say to us, we want to submit our position. We know from our kid on October 7th what happened at 8 a.m. in the morning. or soldiers who fought, or wounded, or ordinary Israelis, they are seeking, and that is why I repeated my call for a National Inquiry Commission. A National Inquiry Committee is by Israeli law an instance, a tribunal that can investigate this in depth. And then, of course, you'll have the political ramifications you're alluding to. Not only that, we are a democracy. Everything is debated out in the open. We are a very vibrant, successful democracy. With all its challenges and problems, it is impressive to see how the debate goes on in hundreds of websites, in demonstrations in the streets, in public debates and so forth and so on, and TV channels, and in the parliament. And I'm sure that will be at the end discussed and deliberated when election comes.
You are a democracy, but there are, as you know, many friends of Israel. I'm thinking of people like Richard Haas in the United States, who say, if Israel continues on its current path, though, with 7 million Palestinians who do not have political voice, it will not be able to be, in the long run, a Jewish democratic state. So that there is a tension.
We understand that there must be a political move forward on the Palestinian front. But one has to understand the state of mind of Israelis. To come after such a horror and a national trauma, surrounded from 7 different frontiers, and expect Israelis to say, hey guys, we are just, we are withdrawing, we're pulling out from that settlement or otherwise, that's not realistic at all. It doesn't make sense to Israelis. They need to see something that makes sense in terms of their personal security and safety. There were many efforts in the past. There will probably be new efforts now. That is why I think the trajectory of moving forward with Saudi Arabia, with Arab countries, which of course puts the Palestinian issue as a focal point in the discussions, is something which makes more sense to me.
At the World Economic Forum this week, there is also one of the representatives of Iran here, Javad Zarif, the vice president, former foreign minister, the man who negotiated the nuclear deal. Do you have any message for him? Is there any possibility of a dialogue?
I'm not sure he is directly involved anymore in the real decision-making process through the Iranian leadership, although he holds title. The JCPOA was one venue that collapsed. And the real issue is that in the interim, we've seen that parallel to developing more and more capabilities which threaten world stability, I mean, that nation goes on and on and on and on, spending billions on account of its citizens, just to create havoc, terror, pain, undermine. It's unbelievable. It's a nation with great history, a great culture, and they've deviated into a rogue state, which calls the only nation state in the world that calls for the annihilation of another nation state. So that is why we're very suspicious, meaning we believe that there has to be clear message set by world leadership to the Iranians, no more. And we try to explain it. Look, our homes were attacked by Iranians. We were under sirens in shelters. Of course, we took serious steps back against them. But it has to be clear that this is unacceptable in the new era that was declared yesterday. Let's hope for that.
Finally, taking into account everything you've said, I want to take us back to the fundamental question of Israel's security situation, which to me looks like it is massively improved. Syria, Assad is gone, Iran is weakened, right?
Yeah.
Does that all leave you more optimistic, or because of all the real issues, are you more wary than optimistic?
No, I'm actually definitely more optimistic. And I think, our people, our nation, has shown immense resilience. People left their homes, people older than you and me even, all the way up to the age of 96, volunteered and went to the army. Many of them are still serving hundreds and hundreds of days, leaving everything behind, simply to make sure that it doesn't happen again. This is the message we got. That is why, think about the enormous pain that was involved in getting to the hostage deal, which every Israeli wants to see them home, but is worried. We don't want this to return. We want to change the reality to the better. We did that in many ways. And of course, with the support of allies and the United States of America. But at the end, it was our people, our heroes, and many paid with their lives. So I am absolutely optimistic. I'm always optimistic about the eternity of Israel. But when it comes to the details, as you can see, I want to be lucid, mainstream, cautious. And I think we can do both. Strive to continue to change, not only by way of military operations, but also by way of diplomacy, but also never lose sight of the risks.
President Herzog,
thank you very much.
Great pleasure.
As always. That was terrific.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
You're terrific.